They say your whole life can change in a single moment. A blink, a breath, a decision you didn't even realize you were making, and suddenly, everything is different. I learned that truth on a rainy Thursday afternoon, with a tray in my hands and a tight smile on my face. I'm David. 26. Waiter at La Verite, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. It's the kind of place where a single bottle of wine costs more than my rent, where the walls are lined with glass art and the napkins are folded by hand, not machine. I never quite felt like I belonged there, not really, but it paid the bills, and in some twisted way, I liked the glimpse into a world I'd never touch. I kept my head down, stayed out of trouble, worked hard, and took care of my girlfriend, Sophie. She's studying to become a nurse. Sweetest person I've ever met. We've been together since we were both working part-time in college. She believes in me more than I believe in myself most days. Without her, I don't know where I'd be. Anyway, that Thursday, the hostess called me over just before lunch rush. Table 9, she said. They asked for someone discreet and professional. That's you. I adjusted my collar, smoothed my apron, and walked across the marbled floor to the corner window. There they were, two women who looked like they stepped straight out of a magazine. One was dark-haired, sleek, poised, with a presence that demanded attention. The other had soft curls and a quieter elegance, like she'd grown up with silver spoons and ballet lessons. The first woman looked up at me and smiled. You're David, right? I blinked. Yes, ma'am. How can I assist you today? Her eyes scanned me, not just looked, scanned. Like she was assessing more than my words. We'll start with sparkling water, and I'd like to ask a few questions about the menu. But more importantly, she tilted her head. Do you model? I laughed, confused. No, I just work here. She exchanged a glance with her friend and smiled. That's a shame. I'm Nadia Lemaire. I run a luxury fragrance brand. We're preparing a new campaign for our men's line, and you have exactly the look we want: athletic, defined, strong jawline. Intense eyes. You're real. Not plastic. I was stunned. I didn't know whether to thank her or check if she was joking. I appreciate that, but I've never modeled before. You wouldn't need to. We'll coach you. It's one afternoon. Pays well. And you'd be wearing a suit, not wings. She smirked. Think about it. I took their order, stumbled through the rest of the service, and tried not to let it rattle me. But all afternoon, I could feel her watching me. I couldn't tell if it made me nervous or flattered or both. After they left, Nadia gave me her card. Call me by the weekend. I'll set everything up. That night, I told Sophie about it. She laughed. You. A model. What kind of world are we living in? I grinned. I know, right? It's crazy. Then she got quiet. But, you're not actually going to do it, are you? Why not? It's just one shoot. Nothing sketchy. I don't know, David. It just feels off. You're not part of that world. You're grounded. She sounds like someone who eats people like us for breakfast. I kissed her forehead. You worry too much. 2 days later, I texted Nadia. The photo shoot was set in a loft studio downtown. Everything smelled like expensive candles and espresso. There were stylists, a makeup guy, even a dude just in charge of lighting. It felt unreal, like I had stepped into someone else's life. And when I looked in the mirror, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit with a silver watch on my wrist, I barely recognized myself. You're a natural, Nadia whispered as the camera clicked away. See? I knew I was right about you. She hovered a little too close. Gave directions no one else could hear. Her hand brushed my shoulder more than once. At the end of it all, she said, I'd like to take you to dinner. Just us. No cameras. I froze. Nadia. I have a girlfriend. She blinked. And I'm with her. I love her. I'm sorry if you thought. She raised a hand. No, it's fine. Totally fine. But her smile disappeared before it fully formed. The next morning, I was pulled into the manager's office at La Verite. "David," Mr. Kendall said, avoiding eye contact. "We've had a complaint from a high-profile client. Apparently, you were inappropriate during her visit. She doesn't want to see you here again. And honestly, with her connections, that puts us in a tough spot." "What? That's not true." "I know it sounds strange. But she's influential. We can't risk bad press." "I'm sorry. We'll pay out the week. But we have to let you go." I walked out in a daze. Just like that, I was unemployed. I tried to call Nadia. No response. I messaged her. Nothing. By noon, the shoot photos were pulled from the campaign's website. My name was erased from the credit list. It was like I never existed. When I told Sophie, she was furious. "She set you up. Just because you said no." I nodded slowly, still trying to make sense of it. "So what are you going to do now?" I didn't have an answer. But I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let someone like Nadia control the story of my life. Losing your job is one thing. Being erased is another. It wasn't just the pay. It was the routine, the dignity, the sense of purpose. One day, I'm wearing a pressed white shirt and calling out wine pairings to billionaires. The next, I'm on the couch with a blank stare and the smell of reheated soup in the air. Sophie kept trying to make me feel better. She made pancakes the morning after I was fired, even though we were already watching every dollar. "You'll find something else," she said, squeezing my hand. "Something better. Maybe even something real." But I didn't want something else. I wanted my life back, the one I had before Nadia Lemaire strolled into that restaurant and pulled the rug out from under me just because I had the audacity to say no. For days, I replayed everything in my mind. Her smile. The way she scanned me like I was a product on a shelf. The way her voice cooled when I mentioned Sophie. I tried to contact the agency that ran the shoot, nothing. The stylist who'd fixed my collar and said I had movie star shoulders, blocked. I even called the studio itself. The receptionist politely told me she had no records of any shoot under Nadia's name. It was like I'd been part of a dream. And now I was wide awake, and no one remembered me. Sophie brought me a hot chocolate one night, curled up next to me, and whispered, "Maybe you should talk to someone." "A lawyer." I scoffed. "For what?" "I didn't sign anything. I was never even paid. I was a ghost." "You were a human being," she said. "She humiliated you. She stole your job. There has to be a way to fight back." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But in this world, people like Nadia don't answer to anyone. They have lawyers on speed dial, connections that go all the way to City Hall, and a PR team that could spin a car crash into a photo op. I was just a guy with no job and a bruised ego. A week passed. Then another. I filled out applications. Got no callbacks. I tried walking into restaurants, resumes in hand, dressed nice and smiling wide, but when one manager saw La Verite on my work history and asked why I left, I gave him the truth. And that was the last I heard from him. Word had gotten out. Or maybe Nadia made sure it did. I wasn't just jobless. I was blacklisted. That night, after another dead-end interview, I sat in the apartment staring at the ceiling while Sophie cried softly in the bathroom. I hated that sound more than anything. She didn't want me to hear, but I did. And I hated that I didn't know how to fix it. Then, out of nowhere, an email. Subject: Model Inquiry, Private Photographer. At first, I thought it was spam. But the name below caught my attention. Julian Ash. I remembered him. He was the photographer from the shoot. The only one who seemed human. Kind. Quietly focused. He offered me a bottle of water and told me, "You're better at this than half the people I shoot." I opened the message. "David, I heard what happened. I've worked with Nadia before. You're not the first she's burned. If you're open to talking, coffee's on me. I have a project you might be perfect for. No strings, no games. Just art. Julian." We met at a small cafe downtown. No velvet ropes, no luxury candles. Just chipped mugs and the smell of fresh croissants. Julian had soft eyes. You could tell he saw people, not just images. He didn't ask how I was, just nodded like he already knew. I don't usually reach out like this, he said. But what happened to you? It wasn't right. Thanks, I said. But I don't know if I want to dip my toe back into that world again. You're not dipping, he replied. You're taking control. I'm working on an independent series, portraits of everyday people who've been stepped on by power. Real faces. Real pain. You'd be perfect. I looked at him, unsure. And what does that get me? Another pretty picture? Another excuse for someone rich to feel deep for 5 minutes and then forget. Julian shook his head. It gets you seen, really seen. And it starts a conversation that Nadia can't silence. I thought about it for a night. Talked to Sophie. She was hesitant, but supportive. So I said yes. The shoot was different. No makeup. No stylist. No pretenses. Just me, barefaced, under natural light, with my real clothes and my real scars. Julian asked me to sit. Then stand. Then turn my face slightly. He didn't say much, just let the camera do the talking. Afterwards, he showed me a single shot, black and white. My eyes were raw, but steady. My jaw clenched. My posture tired, but unbroken. This, he said, is what strength looks like. He posted it that weekend, part of a growing online gallery called Faces They Forgot. It had a small following, mostly artists and activists. But something about my photo caught fire. Within 3 days, it had 10,000 shares. Within a week, it hit 100,000. People started commenting. I feel this. Who is he? Tell us his story. This is what real modeling looks like. My inbox began to fill with messages, small brands wanting to collaborate, podcasts asking for interviews, even a few journalists sniffing around the scandal at La Verite. I ignored most of it at first. I wasn't ready. But then I got another message, this time from an anonymous account. She's going to come after you again. Be ready. I showed it to Julian. He frowned. I've seen this before. Nadia doesn't like to lose control of the narrative. You've become the face of something she can't manage. She already ruined my life, I said. What else can she do? He looked at me, grim. If I were you, I'd get ahead of it. How? Tell the whole story. Your words. Your voice. Before she twists it again. That night, I opened my laptop. I stared at the blank screen for over an hour. My hands were trembling. Not from fear, from anger, from purpose. And then I started typing. Have you ever pressed post and immediately regretted it? I didn't regret the truth, not one word of it. But I won't lie and say I wasn't terrified when I finally hit publish. My story went live on a Saturday night, tucked between the usual noise of weekend photos and humble brags. It was a simple blog post, shared through Julian's growing online gallery and a few forums that spotlighted working-class voices. I titled it. I said no. She took everything. I didn't name Nadia directly. I didn't have to. I started from the beginning, waiting tables, working hard, trying to make ends meet. I described how she walked into my life like a queen choosing from a lineup. How she offered me the chance to be part of something bigger, something glamorous. How it felt to be seen, really seen, for the first time in my life. And how quickly it turned to ash when I turned her down. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't embellish. I told the truth, about the photo shoot, the proposition, the rejection, the retaliation. About being fired without warning, blacklisted, and ghosted. I ended it like this. I wasn't important enough to fight. I was just a waiter with a decent face and a strong back. But I am more than that. And I'm not staying silent anymore. I thought maybe a few hundred people would read it. By morning, it had gone viral. My inbox exploded. DMs, emails, even voicemails from reporters. Friends from high school messaged me saying they'd seen my face on Instagram stories they weren't even following. Strangers were tagging the brand Nadia worked for, demanding accountability. One comment said, "Men can be victims too. This is power abuse, plain and simple." Another said, "I met Nadia once. She's terrifying. This sounds just like her." I sat at the kitchen table in stunned silence, refreshing the page again and again. The numbers kept climbing. Sophie leaned over my shoulder, eyes wide. "I think you just started something." But not everyone was supportive. Some said I was lying for attention. Others accused me of bitterness, of not being able to handle rejection. One tweet cut deep. "You really expect us to believe a billionaire fashion exec risked her career over you? Stay humble, bro." It was like being punched in the chest. I closed the screen. For a moment, I wanted to delete everything. Just shut it all down. But then I got an email from a man named Jeremy. He said he was a stylist. Had worked with Nadia on 3 campaigns over the past 4 years. He wrote, "You're not the first. She ruins people quietly, not because she's evil, but because she can. They don't talk because they're scared. Thank you for being the one who did." Over the next few days, more messages like his poured in. Assistants, makeup artists, interns. All had similar stories. Subtle threats. Jobs lost. Photos pulled. One woman said she had her name removed from a fragrance line after asking for proper credit. I shared some of them anonymously, with their permission, on my page. It became a wave, not just my voice anymore, but a chorus. And then something happened I never expected. I got a call from the Morning Bulletin. A national outlet. Real journalism, not clickbait. The reporter, Diane Travers, had been following the story and asked if I'd go on record for a feature. I hesitated. Sophie and I stayed up late talking it through. She was worried, understandably. What if Nadia retaliated harder? What if we weren't safe? But then she said something that stuck with me. "If you're going to be a voice, don't whisper." So I called Diane the next day and said, "Let's do it." The interview was intense, 3 hours in a quiet studio with a mic in front of me and a legal team hovering just outside. Diane was respectful but firm. She didn't just want gossip, she wanted proof. I gave her everything I had, the original emails from Nadia, the time-stamped photos from the shoot, the termination letter from the restaurant. I also shared some of the anonymous testimonials others had sent me. By the end of it, she said, "This isn't just a story about one man losing a job. This is about power. Control. The illusion of glamour hiding something rotten underneath." The article dropped 3 days later. Front page of their weekend magazine section. Perfume and power, the hidden cost of saying no. It didn't name Nadia directly, the legal team wouldn't allow it. But anyone who followed fashion knew exactly who it was about. By Monday, hashtags were trending. Hashtag fragrance fallout. Hashtag Iwas David. Hashtag say no and stay strong. Some of the biggest names in fashion started to distance themselves quietly. Her brand, once glossy and untouchable, went into PR overdrive. They released a vague statement about reaffirming their values and re-examining partnerships. But Nadia. Still silent. Until she wasn't. On Wednesday morning, I got a letter. Hand-delivered. Cream envelope, thick paper. No return address. I opened it slowly, heart pounding. Inside was a single sentence. "Be careful who you try to destroy. Not everyone stays silent forever. NL." I showed it to Julian. He took one look and said, "She's testing you. She wants to know if you'll break." I wanted to. For a moment, I honestly did. I wanted to crawl back into anonymity and pretend this had never happened. But then I thought of Jeremy. Of the assistant who said she cried every night for 6 months after being fired for saying the wrong thing. Of the woman who wrote to me about how she quit fashion altogether because it was all smoke and sharks. I couldn't stop now. Nadia wanted to scare me. Fine. But she forgot something. She may have taken my job, but she gave me a voice. And I wasn't done using it. 2 weeks after the article dropped, my world was upside down, but in a strange, surreal way, it was finally moving forward. People still stared at me in grocery stores. My face had become recognizable, not from a movie or a viral dance, but because I told a story that made some people uncomfortable and others feel seen for the first time. I started to get real offers. Modeling jobs, but not the flashy, soulless kind. Ethical brands. Small agencies focused on authenticity. A startup from Portland even offered me a small campaign for a cologne called Truth. Funny, right? Still, I didn't say yes to any of it yet. I didn't trust the world I'd only just escaped. I didn't want to jump back into anything that smelled like the old game, even if it wore a different name. Sophie was cautiously optimistic. She saw I was coming back to life, slowly, like a man surfacing after being underwater too long. She'd squeeze my hand and say, "Just promise me you'll stay you, no matter what happens." But I had no idea what was going to happen. Until the envelope came. It was dropped in our mailbox without postage. Just a name written on the front in neat, bold handwriting. Adrian Stone. I didn't recognize it. Inside was a single card, matte black, gold lettering. Mr. David Ellis. I represent Stone and Harrow, a private creative agency with deep interest in modern storytelling and authentic brand narratives. We are aware of your recent media presence and the attention your story has garnered. I would like to extend a private invitation to discuss a new opportunity. This would be a re-entry into the modeling world, on your terms. Confidential. Safe. And powerful. Please meet me Thursday at 5 p.m. at the address below. A.S. There was no social media tag. No phone number. Just an address in the financial district and a time. I turned the card over twice. It felt expensive. Like something handed out in secret rooms. I wasn't sure whether to go. Julian told me, Stone and Harrow are real. Very real. Quiet, but powerful. They don't deal in hype, they deal in legacy. Sophie said nothing at first. Just studied the card like it might catch fire. Finally, she asked, "Do you think this is another trap?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I think I need to find out." Thursday came. I wore a blazer Sophie and I picked out years ago for a wedding, the one that always made her smile. The building was all glass and angles, like something out of a futuristic film. Security was tight. The receptionist greeted me by name. "Mr. Stone will see you now." A private elevator took me to the 33rd floor. A single office. Sleek. Minimal. Windows framing the city like art. And behind a dark desk stood a man in his 60s, tall, silver hair swept back, his suit flawless but understated. His eyes were the color of worn leather, unreadable, calm. "Mr. Ellis," he said, extending a hand. "I've been waiting for you." He didn't waste time. "I've read every article. Watched every interview. I know about Nadia. I know about your refusal. I know about your fallout. What I want to know is," he leaned forward slightly, "what do you want next?" I hesitated. "Honestly, I don't even know anymore." He nodded, unsurprised. "That's the perfect answer. Because men like you aren't used to being asked that question." I didn't know how to respond. He continued, "We're launching something new. A campaign, not just for a product, but for a message. Men redefined. Vulnerability without weakness. Power without cruelty. Your face is already out there. We want your voice." I raised an eyebrow. "Modeling." "In part," he said. "But also something more. A partnership. We want to build a brand around this movement. Start with a fragrance, yes, but tied to you. Your values. Your story. You won't be a prop. You'll be the foundation." I swallowed hard. "Why me?" He looked at me with something close to admiration. "Because you stood up to someone no one else dared to challenge. And because you didn't break. That kind of integrity is rare. It sells more than beauty ever will." He laid out the deal. Equity in the brand. Creative control. Full transparency in contracts. A professional team who answered to me, not the other way around. He wasn't offering me a comeback. He was offering me a platform. I asked for 24 hours to think. He smiled. Of course. If you say no, we'll respect it. If you say yes, you'll help rewrite the rules. That night, I didn't sleep. Sophie and I sat on the balcony with a bottle of cheap wine, the city humming below us. I told her everything. She listened quietly. Then said, "It sounds honest. Maybe for once, you can be part of something good." "But it's still that world," I said. "Perfumes. Images. Selling a version of me." She put her hand on my chest. "Then make sure it's the real you." In the morning, I called Mr. Stone. "I'm in," I said. "But only if I never have to be silent again." He chuckled. "That's the idea." The following weeks were a whirlwind. We brainstormed. Built the concept. Shot test images. I wrote the ad copy myself. The campaign was called Undone. The tagline: "Not for who they think you are. For who you are when they stop watching." It was raw. Quiet. Bold in its simplicity. No filters. No fake smiles. Just moments, real ones. And at the center, me. Not perfect. Not polished. Just real. Before the launch, Mr. Stone pulled me aside. "You know this will bring her out again," he said. "Nadia. She won't like that you're rising on your own." I nodded. "Let her watch." He paused. "That's not all. She's already trying to buy one of our smaller partners. Trying to block us." Quietly. "Then it's working," I said. "She's scared." He looked me in the eyes. "Are you?" I smiled faintly. "Not anymore." The night before the campaign launched, I got a letter at my apartment. No envelope. Just a folded sheet of paper, slipped under our door. One sentence again, scrawled in rushed handwriting. "You should have stayed in your place." This time, I didn't flinch. I pinned the note to the fridge. And the next morning, I walked into the studio, ready for the world to see the man I had become. You don't really understand how loud silence can be until you walk into a room and every face turns toward you, but no one says a word. That's what it felt like the day our campaign launched. The ad was simple: no glitter, no sets, no fancy camera tricks. Just me, standing in the middle of a rain-soaked alley in a white t-shirt, eyes fixed straight into the lens. No smile. No pose. Just me. The tagline hung below. "Undone, for the men you are when no one's watching." It hit harder than we expected. By noon, it had over 1 million views. By sunset, we were trending on Twitter, TikTok, and every fashion blog worth its domain. People weren't just sharing the image, they were talking about it. About men. About image. About control. And about me. Some called me brave. Others called me opportunistic. One article said, "David Ellis represents the shift we didn't know we needed, the working classman standing in the ashes of glamour, saying, 'I'm still here.'" But not everyone applauded. Especially not her. On the second day, Nadia made her move. She went live on her verified account, sitting in a tastefully lit home studio, dressed in neutral colors, her tone soft and apologetic, the way only powerful people sound when they're pretending they've been wronged. She opened with, "I've remained silent out of respect. But silence allows false narratives to grow." She framed me as an ambitious unknown, someone who misinterpreted professional interest. She described my accusations as unproven and damaging. Then she dropped the line that made headlines for days. "Sometimes, when you give someone their first taste of opportunity, they bite the hand instead of saying thank you." The comments were turned off. The damage, of course, was immediate. Sponsors called Mr. Stone. Some were nervous. A few wanted to pause discussions. A well-known department store pulled out of our distribution deal, citing controversy. I could see it in the team's faces, fear. Not of me, but of the industry, and how it crushes anyone who steps out of line. But Stone didn't flinch. He called a meeting. Just us. Closed doors. She's trying to spook us, he said. It's her only real weapon, doubt. What do we do? I asked. We hold the line, he said. And if you're willing, we go louder. 2 days later, we released the second ad. This time, it wasn't a photo. It was a video. Black and white. 1 minute long. Just me, sitting in a chair, looking straight into the lens. My voice, low, steady. They told me to be quiet. That silence was safer. They told me to take the opportunity and not ask questions. But I've waited tables. I've been ignored, dismissed, talked over. I know what it means to be small in a room full of power. And I'm telling you now, don't wait for permission to speak. Be your own voice. Even if it shakes. At the end, the undone logo faded in. Nothing more. The video shattered expectations. Men from all walks of life started sharing their own stories. A movement was forming, not a trend, not a hashtag, but something real. Firefighters. Dads. Janitors. Even a former model who admitted he was once fired for rejecting a creative director's invitation. I got messages I never imagined receiving. One read, "You made me feel human again. Thank you." Another, "This campaign isn't about cologne anymore. It's about courage." Nadia's camp wasn't quiet for long. Suddenly, old photos of me from my early waiter days surfaced on gossip sites. One article implied I'd lied about my background, twisting my story to look more blue-collar than it was. They were reaching. But people noticed. Comment sections flooded with backlash. So now we're canceling people for being waiters. Funny how she's still trying to bury him instead of addressing the original story. For the first time, Nadia's carefully sculpted image began to crack. Not break, not shatter, but crack. And then, the real twist came. It started with a phone call from Jeremy, the stylist who'd messaged me after my story first went public. He said, "There's someone you need to talk to. She used to work for Nadia. She has proof." The woman's name was Lily. She'd been an intern on one of Nadia's campaigns 3 years ago. Quiet. Smart. Kept her head down. Until she overheard a conversation. A phone call between Nadia and a restaurant manager. "My old manager. She told him to fire you," Lily said over Zoom, voice shaking. "She promised him his restaurant would get featured in a luxury dining spread if he let you go." I heard it. I was logging call notes. I even saved the recording. I blinked. "You have a recording?" She nodded, then added, "I've been scared for years. But I'm tired of being afraid." With her permission, we shared it. The audio wasn't crystal clear, but it was enough. Nadia's voice unmistakable. Her tone clipped, surgical. "He's done. Make sure it's clean. I don't want headlines. But he needs to disappear. Quietly." The backlash hit like a wave. Articles exploded. Influencers deleted their endorsements of her brand. A few former collaborators finally spoke up. A #DropNadia petition gained over 100,000 signatures in 3 days. Her brand issued a vague, internal review statement. But it was too late. For the first time, she was the one on the defensive. Sophie and I sat on the couch that night, watching the coverage. "I still can't believe it," I whispered. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You didn't just survive, David. You changed the conversation." I turned to her. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. You didn't need me to fight," she said, smiling softly. "You just needed someone to remind you why you were fighting." Later that night, I checked my inbox. Hundreds of new messages. But one stood out. No subject line. Just a name in the sender field. Nadia. My heart skipped. I clicked. It was one sentence. "You got what you wanted. But don't think this is over." I stared at it for a long time. Then, I hit delete. Because she was wrong. It was over. But not for me. For her. Success, as it turns out, doesn't arrive with fireworks or confetti. Sometimes, it just slips in quietly while you're washing dishes. One morning, a week after the recording leaked and Nadia's reputation began its very public decline, I was standing barefoot in the kitchen, scrubbing a frying pan, when Sophie read an article out loud from her phone. David Ellis, former waiter turned activist model, is reshaping masculinity in modern media. I let out a short laugh. Activist model? That's a first. She looked up from her coffee. Well, it's better than eye candy with a temper. I grinned. But deep down, I didn't know how to feel about it. Because something strange happens when people start building a story about you, they forget to ask whether it matches the one you're living. Stone and Harrow exploded after the second Undone ad. Sales soared. Social media impressions doubled weekly. We were being called the voice of a generation, which, frankly, made me a little nauseous. I was flown out to interviews, podcasts, panel discussions, all asking about integrity, ethics, masculinity, truth. And I answered. Honestly. Thoughtfully. Carefully. But at night, I would lie awake, wondering, who am I becoming? I was still me, wasn't I? Just more visible. Then came the magazine cover. It was Stone's idea. A full spread. National. You're the face now, he said in his crisp voice over a video call. Time to own it. The photo shoot was at a minimalist studio in Brooklyn. Same aesthetic, no makeup, no filters, raw light. But I felt different this time. Self-conscious. Too clean. Too managed. The photographer said, tilt your head just slightly, yeah, that. Right there. Don't smile. That's the look people expect from you. I held the pose. Stared into the lens. But all I could think about was the quiet corner of the restaurant where I used to fold napkins between lunch and dinner service. The day the magazine hit the stands, Sophie framed the cover and hung it in our hallway. I protested. It's weird, I told her. It's huge, she countered. You earned this. Feels like it belongs to someone else. She touched my chest. That guy's still in here. Just, standing a little taller now. But the more visible I became, the less time I had to be with her. Press tours. Brand meetings. Long nights strategizing with marketing teams. Every day, my calendar looked like a chessboard. One night I came home after midnight, exhausted, and found Sophie sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. You missed dinner, she said quietly. I know, I whispered, guilt already rising. She looked at me, eyes searching. You're building something amazing, David. But I miss you. That hurt. Because it was true. Things came to a head when I was offered my own signature fragrance line. Not just your face, Stone told me. Your name. David Ellis #1, think legacy. It was surreal. Tempting. Massive. But it also meant travel. Months on the road. Promotional tours. International branding deals. Sophie listened as I explained the offer. When I finished, she simply asked, "What do you want?" I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure anymore. That night, I stood on our balcony, staring out at the skyline. The same city that once made me feel small now seemed to rise with me. But I couldn't ignore the tightness in my chest. Was I climbing, or being carried? And by whose hands? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my first photos from the restaurant. Me in a black vest, holding a tray, mid-laugh. Unpolished. Real. I missed that guy. Not the struggle. Not the insecurity. Just the clarity. He knew exactly who he was. The next morning, I told Stone I needed a break. He tried to push back, politely, of course. This is momentum we can't buy again, he warned. But I stood firm. If I'm going to put my name on something, I need to know who I am first. He paused. Then said, take the time. But know this, people are watching. The world's giving you a stage, don't walk off it too soon. Maybe he meant it as advice. But to me, it sounded like a threat dressed as encouragement. For the first time in months, I unplugged. I turned down interviews. Ignored brand emails. I took Sophie out to a cabin upstate, no signal, no cameras, just us and the wind in the trees. We hiked. Cooked over fire. Talked about everything and nothing. One night, as we lay under a sky full of stars, she asked, "What are you afraid of?" I thought for a long time. Then said, that I'll wake up one day and not recognize myself. That I'll become the person Nadia thought I was pretending to be. She took my hand and said softly, "Then don't. No one's forcing you to be anyone but you." When we returned to the city, things were different. I wasn't chasing headlines anymore. I started picking projects, slowly, carefully. I chose brands that aligned with values, not just money. I said no more than I said yes. People were confused. "Why walk away from the spotlight?" they asked. But I wasn't walking away. I was walking through it, toward something better. And then, one evening, I got an email from an organization that ran after-school programs in lower-income neighborhoods. They said boys there had seen our Undone campaign and started talking, for the first time, about feelings. About boundaries. About pressure. They wanted me to speak at one of the schools. I said yes. Not because it was good press. But because it felt right. When I walked into that gymnasium, rows of kids turned toward me. Most of them had never worn cologne in their lives. But they'd seen my face. They knew the story. And one boy, probably 12, raised his hand and asked, "How did you say no to someone powerful?" I smiled. And said, "Because I realized no one's power is bigger than your peace." That night, Sophie and I sat on the rooftop of our building. We were wrapped in a blanket, watching the lights of the city shimmer. "You feel like yourself again," she whispered. "I think I do," I said. "But you're not the same." "No," I agreed. "I'm better." She looked at me. "So what now?" I turned to her. And smiled. There's a kind of silence that only comes after a storm, not the empty kind, but the peaceful one. The kind where the air smells like fresh soil and distant thunder, and everything feels cleaner, more honest. That's where I found myself. Not at the top of anything. Not on a throne or under a spotlight. Just, in the quiet. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing the next thing. I was choosing it. 6 months passed since the scandal broke. Nadia had gone radio silent. Her brand's social media hadn't posted in weeks. Rumors swirled, international lawsuits, investors pulling out, former employees coming forward. But I didn't follow it closely anymore. Not because I didn't care. But because I finally understood something. You don't heal by watching someone else fall. You heal by standing where they tried to bury you, and planting something better. The Undone campaign continued to thrive, but I took a back seat. I'd said what I needed to say. The message was out there. Now it was bigger than me. And honestly, I didn't want to be a brand anymore. I wanted to build something real. That's when the idea came. It wasn't dramatic. No light bulb moment. Just a quiet thought while walking past the restaurant where I used to work. The one where it all began. It was empty now. Closed months ago. Lease sign in the window. Something stirred inside me. Not nostalgia. Not bitterness. Possibility. I pitched the idea to Sophie first. "I want to open my own place," I said, half expecting her to laugh. Instead, she lit up. "Tell me everything." So I did. A restaurant, but more than that. A place where service workers are treated like people, not machines. Where every table has dignity, no matter the bill. Where a waiter could become a manager, a dishwasher could suggest the wine list. I'd call it shift. Because sometimes, all someone needs is one shift, one chance, to change everything. Stone thought I was out of my mind. "You're walking away from a 7-figure licensing deal," he said on a call. "No," I corrected. "I'm walking toward something that means more." He didn't understand. And that was okay. Because this time, I wasn't asking for permission. Funding came quickly, not from sponsors, but from a quiet crowd of people who believed in the story. Former co-workers. A few low-key celebrities who'd grown up poor. Even some regular folks who sent $10 with messages like, "For every server who smiled through the worst day of their life." It moved me. Not the money, the belief. I signed the lease on the old restaurant and got to work. I spent weeks in that dusty space with a hammer in one hand and blueprints in the other. I ripped out the old floors, replaced the fixtures, and remagined every corner. And in the process, I found parts of myself again. The version who took pride in a clean station. Who knew every regular's drink order. Who tied his apron like it meant something. But now, I had something else too, vision. Opening night came fast. It wasn't fancy. We didn't do PR. Just a handwritten sign in the window. Now open, come as you are. Leave as you deserve. The first customer was a teenage girl with her mother. The girl wore a hoodie 2 sizes too big and looked nervous. I brought them menus personally. She blinked at me. "You're the guy from the perfume thing, right?" I smiled. "Not tonight. Tonight, I'm just your waiter." Her face lit up. And I realized that was the legacy I wanted. Not fame. Not fragrance. Impact. Weeks passed. Shift started gaining attention, not from fashion magazines, but from food blogs, local news, and, more importantly, word of mouth. People said it felt like home. Staff turnover was almost non-existent. One of our line cooks started teaching Saturday morning classes for teens who wanted to learn culinary basics. Sophie helped with the decor. Her fingerprints were on every corner. Photos of hospitality workers on the walls. Quotes about service. Kindness. Growth. One quote was framed above the kitchen pass. "Power isn't in being above someone. It's in lifting someone beside you." I didn't remember when I'd said that. But it sounded right. And then, one afternoon, Nadia walked in. I recognized her instantly, even behind the sunglasses. She looked thinner. Sharper. But tired. She approached the hostess stand. "I'm not here to cause a scene," she said. "I just wanted to see it." I didn't ask how she knew where to find me. She always knew things. She looked around the space. The photos. The staff. Then she looked at me. "You really did it," she said quietly. "I did," I replied. She removed her sunglasses, eyes softer than I remembered. "I was wrong about you." I nodded. And I was right about me. Silence hung between us. Then she said, "Good luck, David," and walked out. No drama. No bitterness. Just an ending. And I let it end. Sometime later, I was cleaning menus at the bar when a young man approached me. "Excuse me," he said, nervous. "Can I ask how you got from being a waiter to all of this?" I looked at him. Young. Hopeful. Probably just starting out. I smiled and said, I said no when it mattered. And I didn't let that no define me. He nodded slowly. I needed to hear that. "Stick around," I said. "We've got more stories on the menu than meals." That night, I closed up, turned off the lights, and stood by the window looking out into the quiet street. The place smelled like rosemary and warm bread. Not perfume. Not ambition. Just life. Real and earned. Sophie walked up behind me, wrapped her arms around my waist, and whispered, "So, is this it?" I turned to her, kissed her forehead, and replied, "No. This is just the beginning."